Ever seen a book worth more than your house? Did you know monks spent years making a single book? Can you imagine painting with gold? Number 10. The mind-blowing world of medieval bling books. Picture this, it's the 8th century, no electricity, no internet, no printing press. And yet, some of the most stunning artwork ever created was being produced in quiet monasteries across Europe. Illuminated manuscripts were the Instagram of the Middle Ages, except each post took months or years to create and required insane artistic skills. These weren't just books. They were status symbols, spiritual objects, and works of art rolled into one. Wealthy nobles and church officials commissioned these books to show off their power and piety. A gospel book might cost as much as building a small church. The materials alone, parchment made from hundreds of animal skins, precious pigments from exotic locations, and actual gold were worth a fortune. Scribes and illuminators weren't just copying words and making pretty pictures. They were creating sacred objects believed to contain divine power. The Book of Kells, created around 800 CE, contains the 4 Gospels of the New Testament with decorations so intricate you need a magnifying glass to appreciate it. Tiny spirals within spirals, animals morphing into letters, and complex patterns fill the margins and spaces between words. But why get all this trouble? In an age before mass literacy, these books served as visual theology for the masses. The images told stories that most couldn't read for themselves. They were also objects of devotion, the physical embodiment of sacred texts made as beautiful as human hands could manage. Number 9. From Cow to Codex, the shocking reality of medieval book materials. Before a single word could be written, medieval bookmakers faced a gross reality. They needed animal skin, lots of it. A decent-sized manuscript might require the skins of over 200 sheep. Imagine the smell as workers scraped hair and flesh from these skins to create parchment. The finest books used vellum calfskin, which was smoother and more luxurious than regular parchment. Getting the parchment ready was brutal work. After removing hair and flesh, the skins were stretched on wooden frames where they dried tight as drums. Workers scraped them thin with curved knives, creating a smooth writing surface. The better the parchment preparation, the better the final result would be. But the materials didn't stop there. Inks required their own complex preparation. The basic writing ink, usually black, came from oak galls, abnormal growths found on oak trees where wasps had laid eggs. These were crushed and mixed with iron sulfate and gum arabic to create a permanent ink that actually bit into the parchment surface. The colored pigments came from surprisingly diverse sources. Ultramarine blue, more precious than gold by weight, came from lapis lazuli mined in what is now Afghanistan. Red came from cinnabar, insects like kermes or cochineal, or the plant madder. Yellow might be saffron, worth its weight in gold, or toxic orpiment, which contains arsenic. Green came from verdigris, created by exposing copper to vinegar. Many of these pigments were toxic. Scribes literally risked their health for their art. And then there was gold, applied either as leaf or as shell gold, finely ground particles suspended in gum arabic. The glistening effect of gold catching candlelight in a dark monastery or castle created an almost magical experience for medieval viewers. Number 8. The scribes who sacrificed their bodies for books. Want to know the wildest thing about medieval scribes? They basically destroyed their bodies for their work. Imagine hunching over a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day in unheated rooms with poor light, painstakingly forming each letter with unwavering concentration. Many scribes complained about their working conditions in notes hidden in the margins of manuscripts. One famous note reads, "Thank God it will soon be dark." Another scribe wrote, "Writing is excessive drudgery. It crooks your back, dims your sight, twists your stomach and sides. 3 fingers write, but the whole body labors." Some even got poetic about their suffering. As the harbor is welcome to sailors, so is the last line to scribes. Most scribes were monks who saw their painful labor as spiritual discipline. They worked in special rooms called scriptoria, where silence was mandatory. In winter, the cold made their fingers so stiff they could barely hold a pen. In summer, flies would land on their fresh ink, ruining hours of work. Before starting work, a scribe would prepare his parchment by marking guidelines for writing using a stylus and straight edge. These indented lines help keep text straight and properly spaced. The scribe might work from an existing manuscript, copying text while leaving spaces for capital letters and illustrations to be added later. The main writing tool was the quill pen, usually made from goose feathers, though swan and crow feathers were also used. Preparing these quills was an art itself. They had to be cured in hot sand, cut at precise angles, and regularly trimmed to maintain a clean writing edge. Scribes carried small knives specifically for this purpose. Number 7. The secret language of medieval book production. Did you know medieval books had their own behind-the-scenes instructions and production notes? Scribes used a fascinating system to guide the work of other craftspeople who would finish the book. Tiny letters were written in margins to indicate which colored initials should go where. These guide letters would later be covered by the beautifully painted initials. For illustrations, scribes often left notes about what should be depicted. Sometimes these were formal instructions, other times casual notes like "put a big dragon here" or "make this guy looking angry." In some surviving manuscripts, these instructions remain visible because the illuminator never completed the work. The scribes also had quality control methods. After completing a page, they would check for errors. If they found a mistake, they might scrape away the incorrect text with a knife and write over it. For longer omissions, they developed correction marks and notes in margins. Some manuscripts show evidence of supervisors checking work, adding their own correction marks. Book production was typically a team effort. Different people might specialize in writing text, painting initials, creating border decorations, and executing full-page illustrations. This division of labor helped standardize production and make the most of specialized skills. Most fascinating is how these books reveal personality despite strict guidelines. Scribes sometimes added small jokes, complaints, or personal notes in margins. One famous note reads, "Now I've written the whole thing, for Christ's sake give me a drink." Another reads, "A curse on thee, O pen." These hidden messages humanize these ancient craftspeople who otherwise remain anonymous. Number 6. Gold that glows in the dark, how medieval artists created magic. The illumination in illuminated manuscripts comes from the Latin word illuminare, meaning to light up. And light up they did literally. The gold and silver used in these books would catch and reflect candlelight, creating a supernatural glow in dimly lit medieval spaces. Imagine being a mostly illiterate peasant seeing one of these books during a church service. It must have seemed like a miraculous object. Applying gold was a technical process requiring immense skill. For gold leaf, the artist prepared the surface with gesso, a plaster-like substance mixed with bole, a reddish clay. This created a slightly raised surface. When the gesso was tacky but not wet, they would breathe on a sheet of gold leaf to create static electricity, then quickly transfer it to the prepared area. After drying, they would burnish it with a smooth stone or animal tooth to create a mirror-like shine. For more detailed work, artists used shell gold ground into a fine powder and mixed with gum arabic to create a paint. This allowed for delicate details impossible with leaf. Some artists created texture in gold areas by punching tiny patterns with specialized tools, creating a sparkling effect as light hit the uneven surface. Blue pigment often accompanied gold in the most luxurious manuscripts. Made from crushed lapis lazuli, ultramarine was sometimes more expensive than gold itself. The name literally means beyond the sea, as it came to Europe via trade routes from Afghanistan. Preparing it involved grinding the stone, mixing it with wax, resins, and oils, then kneading this mixture in a solution of lye to extract the pure blue pigment. The combination of deep blue and gleaming gold created a heavenly effect. No wonder these colors were often used for scenes of paradise or to depict the robes of the Virgin Mary and Christ. The visual impact in candlelit churches and royal chambers must have been breathtaking. Number 5. Caught in the act, animals and weird creatures in manuscript margins. Ever scrolled through Instagram and suddenly found something bizarre that made you stop? Medieval manuscripts have their equivalents in margin illustrations called Marginalia, and they're often shockingly weird or funny. Knights fighting snails, monkeys playing musical instruments, rabbits hunting humans, hybrid creatures with human heads and animal bodies. Why would serious religious texts contain such strange imagery? Scholars have debated this for years. Some believe these images provided comic relief during long religious services. Others think they represented moral warnings or satirized aspects of medieval society. Whatever the reason, they show medieval people had a sense of humor and imagination we can still appreciate today. Some marginalia depicted everyday life scenes that give historians valuable insights into medieval daily activities. We see people farming, cooking, playing games, and arguing, all activities rarely described in formal historical records. One manuscript shows a cat who apparently walked across the page while the ink was still wet, leaving paw prints. The scribe drew a picture of the cat and added a curse on the animal. Not all margin illustrations were merely decorative or humorous. Many had symbolic meaning understood by medieval viewers but mysterious to us today. A pelican pecking its own breast to feed its young with blood represented Christ's sacrifice. A lion breathing life into its cubs 3 days after their birth symbolized the resurrection. These margin illustrations also allowed artists more freedom than the main religious scenes that had to follow strict conventions. Here, they could experiment with new techniques, show their personality, and perhaps even critique powerful institutions from the safety of the page's edge. Looking at these strange images today connects us directly to the humor and imagination of people who lived nearly 1,000 years ago. Number 4. CSI Medieval, the forensic evidence hidden in ancient books. Want to know something mind-blowing? Scientists today can analyze medieval manuscripts and tell you what the scribes ate, where they lived, and even what animals were used for the parchment. Using techniques like DNA analysis, protein identification, and spectrography, researchers are uncovering the hidden stories behind these books. In 2017, scientists found evidence of smallpox virus DNA in medieval books, helping track the disease's evolution. Others have identified proteins from the hands of scribes' biological signatures left by the people who created these works. Some manuscripts contain traces of arsenic from green pigments, showing how illuminators literally poisoned themselves for their art. Parchment analysis can determine not just what animal was used, but its age, sex, and even the region where it lived based on isotope analysis. Some luxury manuscripts used parchment exclusively from stillborn or very young animals because it was finer and whiter, a sad reminder of the resources commanded for these luxury objects. Hidden fingerprints appear throughout many manuscripts, preserved for centuries in the pigment or on the parchment surface. These provide direct physical connections to the anonymous craftspeople who created these works. Researchers have even found children's fingerprints, suggesting young apprentices helped in workshops. Scientists have also identified unusual ingredients in medieval pigments. Some blue pigments contain crushed Egyptian mummy wrappings, which were often already blue from earlier pigments. Others used urine as a binding agent or fixative. In one German prayer book, researchers found high concentrations of heavy metals in the blue pigment areas and realized medieval readers were accidentally poisoning themselves by kissing the images of saints painted with these toxic materials. Number 3. The medieval book hackers, how scribes got creative. Medieval scribes weren't just mindless copying machines. They were creative problem solvers who constantly innovated. When space ran out, they developed abbreviations and special symbols to fit more text on expensive parchment. These abbreviation systems became so complex they almost formed a shorthand language that only trained scribes could read. When mistakes happened, scribes got creative. If they missed a word, they might add it above the line with a special mark indicating where it belonged. For bigger errors, they might scrape away the parchment surface and rewrite on it, though this often remained visible as a thin spot or discoloration. Some scribes drew little hands with pointing fingers in margins to highlight important passages, the original pointing hand emoji. Scribes developed an ingenious system to keep pages in order called catchwords. At the bottom of each quire, a gathering of folded sheets, they'd write the first word of the next quire so bookbinders would know the correct sequence. They also numbered quires with small marks to prevent mixing them up. These systems helped maintain text integrity during the binding process. Layout innovations changed how people interacted with books. Early manuscripts had continuous text with minimal punctuation, making reading difficult. Over time, scribes developed paragraph marks, chapter divisions, and hierarchical letter sizes to organize information. By the 13th century, university texts included sophisticated reference systems with section numbers and running headers, features we still use in books today. Some scribes recognized their own creativity and signed their work. One Edwin of Canterbury depicted himself in a self-portrait labeled Edwin the Scribe, showing unusual self-awareness for the period. Others left humorous complaints about their working conditions. The light is bad, the parchment is hairy, and the ink is watery. Through these personal touches, anonymous craftspeople asserted their humanity across the centuries. Number 2, the secret lives of medieval manuscripts after they were created. What happened to these incredible books after they were made? Many led surprisingly adventurous lives. Some manuscripts were literally held hostage during wars. Others were dismembered, their decorated pages cut out and sold individually to collectors. Many were scraped clean and reused for different texts when parchment was scarce, creating palimpsests where modern technology can now reveal the hidden original text. The Vikings didn't just raid villages, they targeted monasteries specifically for their book treasures. The Lindisfarne Gospels survived a Viking raid in 793 when monks fled with it, along with the bones of St. Cuthbert. The book traveled with them for 7 years before finding a new home. Other manuscripts weren't so lucky, ending up as burning buildings collapsed around them. During the Reformation, countless illuminated manuscripts were destroyed as idolatrous. Henry VIII's dissolution of monasteries led to books being stripped of valuable bindings, their pages used for mundane purposes like wrapping fish or lining pie tins. One account describes children using manuscript pages as paper airplanes. Some were saved by collectors who recognized their value despite shifting religious views. Books frequently traveled as diplomatic gifts between rulers. The Vienna Coronation Gospels, created around 800, was used for imperial coronations for over 1,000 years, with each emperor taking the oath while touching the book. The physical manuscript became a literal touchpoint, connecting generations of rulers to each other and to divine authority. Some manuscripts contain evidence of centuries of use: wax drippings from candles, wine stains from sacramental celebrations, kiss marks on images of saints, and fingerprints along page edges where generations of readers turned pages. These traces connect us directly to the human experience of those who treasured these books throughout the centuries. Number 1, the digital renaissance: how ancient books are finding new life today. Have you ever zoomed in on a 1,000-year-old book from your phone? Medieval manuscripts are experiencing an unprecedented renaissance through digitization projects. Major libraries worldwide are creating high-resolution images of their manuscript collections, making these once restricted treasures available to anyone with internet access. The Vatican Apostolic Library's digitization project aims to put its 80,000 manuscripts online. The British Library has digitized the Lindisfarne Gospels and other treasures in such high resolution you can see individual parchment fibers and brush strokes. These digital versions allow scholars to study books without causing physical damage and let ordinary people appreciate masterpieces they could never access before. Advanced imaging technologies reveal details invisible to the naked eye. Multispectral imaging can show hidden sketches under paint layers or reveal text that has faded beyond normal visibility. X-ray fluorescence identifies pigment components without taking samples, preserving the integrity of these delicate objects while uncovering their secrets. Digital access has democratized manuscript study, leading to exciting discoveries from unexpected sources. In 2020, a teenager browsing through digital manuscripts identified a fragment of a lost medieval text that professional scholars had overlooked. Online communities of amateur manuscript enthusiasts help identify connections between widely separated collections. The Book of Kells exhibition at Trinity College Dublin combines physical display of the original manuscript with interactive digital experiences that explain its complex symbolism and creation process. This hybrid approach respects the material reality of these books while using technology to deepen our understanding and appreciation. As our world grows increasingly digital, these ancient handmade books hold special fascination. They remind us of the human capacity for creativity, patience, and skill qualities still valuable in our fast-paced world. What would the medieval scribes think if they knew their painstaking work would be viewed by millions of people on glowing screens around the world? Would they recognize their influence on how we still design and experience books today?